Why do you feel the need to explain every boundary like it's a proposal waiting for approval? In the moment, it feels respectful. It feels reasonable. It feels like you're trying to keep peace. But people who push limits don't hear your explanation as honesty. They hear it as flexibility. They hear space they can enter. The more you explain, the more editable you become. And once you're editable, your no is no longer solid. It's just the beginning of negotiation. Imagine the office scene. You're tired, work is done, your mind is already home. Then someone approaches with that polite voice. Can you handle this one extra task? Before your brain answers, your mouth starts building reasons. You explain your workload, you explain your schedule, you explain your exhaustion. You think you're giving context, but you're giving access. You're giving them material to work around. One reason will break, and once one breaks, the whole boundary bends. Soon, conversation isn't about time or workload anymore. It becomes about loyalty, about commitment, about being a good team player. Now you're not protecting your limit, you're defending your character, and once you're in that position, you've already lost control of the exchange. Because character debates have no finish line. They keep you talking until you give in. Now, shift to relationships. You say you need space. Simple, clear. But silence after a boundary feels risky, so you fill it. You explain your feelings, your stress, your past experiences. You reassure, you soften, you decorate your boundary until it looks harmless. And once it looks harmless, it stops being a boundary. It becomes a topic, a discussion, a door left slightly open. The other person doesn't need to understand you. They just need to find the weak hinge. You said you care. You said you're stressed. You said you don't want to hurt me. Each sentence becomes a handle. Something they can pull. Something they can twist. Your explanation becomes the tool used to undo your limit. That's the trap most people don't see while they're inside it. You think you're avoiding conflict, but you're actually delaying it. Because boundaries always cost something. Either you pay discomfort up front or you pay exhaustion later. There's no free version. Predatory personalities know this. They wait for you to choose the cheaper emotional option, explaining, because they know it ends with you folding. Here's the hard truth. Kindness doesn't require justification, but people who benefit from your flexibility will always ask for reasons, not because they care, because reasons give them angles. No reasons means no angles. A short boundary leaves them nothing to attack. That's why simple lines feel so powerful. I can't. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. These sentences are complete. They don't ask for permission. They state terms. The first time you speak like this, watch the reaction. Surprise, offense, awkward silence, a forced laugh, a guilt comment, something designed to pull you back into explanation because they're used to the old version of you, the version that filled silence with apologies. When that version doesn't appear, they feel the loss of control, and they'll try to get it back. Anger is the clearest signal, not your anger, theirs. When someone gets upset at your calm boundary, it means your old compliance served them. Your growth threatens their comfort. That's not a sign you're wrong. That's evidence you've changed the contract without asking for their signature. And they don't like the new terms. You don't need to argue with them. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to prove you're still a good person. You just stop participating in the courtroom. No defense, no speeches, no emotional bargaining. Just a quiet refusal to continue the discussion. That's the real shift. Not louder words, but fewer words. Power in boundaries is not aggression, it's finality. When you stop decorating your no, people understand it faster. When you stop explaining, pressure loses oxygen. Silence after a boundary is not emptiness, it's structure. It tells the other person, this topic is closed, and closed topics are not reopened by emotional force. This is where most people struggle, because we're trained to smooth discomfort, to fix tension, to keep everyone emotionally okay. But your nervous system's fear of tension is exactly what manipulators rely on. They push, you explain. They push again, you soften. Eventually, you comply just to escape the feeling. That's not weakness. That's biology being exploited. Once you see the pattern, you can break it. One sentence, one repeat, no expansion, no extra detail, no emotional negotiation. If the person respects you, they'll adjust. If they don't, they'll escalate. And escalation is information. It shows you who valued your boundaries and who valued your access. Over time, something changes. Your no becomes familiar. People stop expecting essays. They stop expecting apologies. They stop expecting performance. Your presence becomes calm, clear, predictable. And manipulators lose interest because there's nothing to work with. No cracks, no loose threads, no guilt lever. You're not being rude. You're being clear. You're not being cold. You're being consistent. And consistency is what makes boundaries real. Not how well you explain them, not how gently you deliver them, but how firmly you live them. This is the foundation. From here, everything else becomes easier. The next layer is where most people fall back into old habits. You say a boundary once, it lands. There's a pause. And in that pause, your instinct is to fill the space, to explain more, to soften, to reassure, to make sure nobody feels uncomfortable. But that pause is not a mistake. That pause is the boundary taking shape. When you rush to fill it, you collapse your own structure. Watch a simple scene. Someone asks you for time you don't want to give. You say, "I can't." They wait. You feel the heat of that waiting. Your mind starts searching for safe words, a story, a justification, something to make the moment lighter. But the moment doesn't need lightness, it needs clarity. When you hold silence, you're teaching them that your sentence was complete. Most pressure tactics are built on one assumption, that you will talk, that you will try to fix the mood, that you will rescue the other person from discomfort. Once you remove that reflex, their tools stop working. They might try jokes, they might try guilt, they might try fake concern. Each attempt is a hook. Silence is how you don't bite. This is why short boundaries feel so unnatural at first. You've spent years learning to manage other people's emotions, to keep harmony, to avoid being labeled difficult. But harmony built on self-erasure is not harmony. It's quiet surrender. And predators depend on your fear of being seen as harsh. There's a difference between cruelty and clarity. Cruelty harms. Clarity defines. A calm, brief boundary is clarity. It doesn't insult. It doesn't attack. It simply states a limit. The discomfort that follows belongs to the other person, not to you. When you rush to remove their discomfort, you take responsibility for feelings that are not yours. Think of a door. You don't explain to someone why the door is closed. You don't apologize to the door for being firm. You just close it. If someone keeps knocking, you don't redecorate the door. You decide whether to open it or not. Boundaries work the same way. They don't require continuous explanation. They require consistent position. Soon you'll notice something interesting. People who respect you adapt quickly. They hear one boundary and adjust. No drama, no debate, no emotional storm. People who relied on your flexibility react strongly. They push harder. They test. They provoke. Not because you're wrong, because the old version of you is predictable. That reaction is valuable information. It shows you who is in relationship with you and who is in relationship with your compliance. When you stop being endlessly available, the second group feels robbed. But you haven't taken anything from them. You've simply stopped giving what was never owed. Another scene. Someone says, "Why are you being like this?" in response to your boundary. It sounds like a question, but it's a strategy. They're inviting you to explain your change, to justify your growth, to reassure them that you're still manageable. If you enter that conversation, you're back in the negotiation room. If you stay brief, you stay free. A simple line is enough. This is what works for me. No debate, no defense, no evidence. Just statement. Repeat once if needed. After that, action replaces words. You leave. You change topic. You end the call. You shift attention. The boundary moves from concept to reality. This is how you stop being drained by constant justification. Not by becoming cold, not by becoming aggressive, but by becoming steady. Steady people don't need to explain every move. Their consistency speaks louder than their sentences. Over time, your body learns safety in this. The tightness in your chest when you say no starts to fade. The guilt after enforcing a limit becomes quieter. You realize nothing collapsed, nobody died, the world continued, and slowly your nervous system updates. Boundaries are not danger, they are order, and with order comes respect, not forced respect, not fear-based respect, but natural respect, the kind that comes when people know where they stand with you. No guessing, no manipulation, no hidden clauses. You're no longer writing contracts with every conversation. You're simply living your terms. That's when your life gets lighter. Now the real test begins, because once you stop explaining, people start testing. Not everyone. Just the ones who benefited from your old habits. They'll ask again, push again, pretend they didn't hear you, laugh off your boundary, change the topic and circle back. This is not confusion. This is stress testing your new terms. Picture a friend group planning something you don't want to join. You say, "I'm not going." A pause hits the room. Someone laughs and says, "Come on, don't be like that." Another adds, "Just explain why." That word again, why, not for understanding, but for entry. If you start explaining, the debate opens. If you stay simple, the room has to adjust. Most people fold here. They feel social pressure. They feel the weight of being the difficult one. So they soften, they joke, they give a reason, they negotiate. And the group learns a lesson. Push long enough, and the boundary melts. But when you stay calm and repeat the same sentence, something shifts. The group energy changes. They realize this door isn't opening today. This is how respect is built. Not through loud dominance, but through quiet consistency. A boundary spoken once is a request. A boundary repeated without change becomes a rule. A boundary enforced becomes identity. Now, bring it closer. Someone emotionally close to you says, "You've changed." This is one of the oldest control phrases. It's designed to make you defend your new behavior, to explain your growth, to apologize for not being who they preferred. If you step into that conversation, you're back in the old pattern. If you simply answer, "Yes, I have," and stay silent, the power dynamic shifts instantly, because you're no longer asking permission to evolve. People who care about you will adapt. They might need time, but they'll adjust. People who needed you small will resist. They'll gossip, they'll complain, they'll label you cold. Let them. Their reaction is their attachment to the old contract. You don't need to re-sign it. Here's something nobody tells you. Boundaries don't ruin good relationships. They reveal bad ones. Healthy people don't need long explanations. They accept a limit the first time. Unhealthy dynamics require endless justification. When you remove justification, those dynamics collapse. You'll also notice your energy returning. No long messages, no emotional essays, no rehearsing arguments in your head, no post-conversation guilt spirals, just clarity. You say what you mean what you say, and you move on. Silence becomes your ally, not passive silence, not avoidance, but intentional silence. The space where your boundary stands on its own. The space where you don't rescue others from their feelings. the space where you respect yourself enough not to over-explain. Over time, you develop a reputation. People know you're fair, but firm, calm, but not bendable, kind, but not accessible on demand. That balance is rare, and it's powerful. You'll still feel the urge sometimes. The old reflex to soften, to justify, to make sure everyone is okay. That reflex won't vanish overnight, but now you recognize it. You breathe. You stay simple. One line, one repeat, one action, no story. This is how you exit the negotiation habit. Not dramatically, not loudly, but consistently, day by day, moment by moment, boundary by boundary. And once you live like this, a quiet truth becomes obvious. You never needed to explain your worth. You only needed to stop negotiating it. Good. We move deeper now. Once your boundaries become short and steady, a strange thing happens. People start revealing themselves faster. There's no long conversation for them to hide in, no emotional fog, no debate, just a clear line. And their response to that line shows you exactly who they are. Some will nod and move on. No drama, no pressure. Those are balanced people. Others will keep circling, asking the same question in different forms. Are you sure? But it won't be the same without you. Each sentence is an attempt to reopen negotiation. Each is a test of whether you'll return to explaining. If you answer with new reasons each time, you teach them persistence works. If you answer with the same sentence each time, you teach them the boundary is fixed. No extra data, no emotional leakage, just repetition. That's how a line becomes solid. Most people think confidence is loud. It's not. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need agreement. It just stands. When you stop explaining, you start standing. Now notice how this changes your internal world. Earlier, every boundary came with anxiety. Will they be upset? Will they misunderstand? Will they think I'm rude? That anxiety pushed you into over-communication. But as you practice simplicity, your nervous system learns a new truth. Discomfort is survivable. Other people's emotions are not emergencies, and you are not responsible for managing every reaction. This is where freedom begins. Let's look at another common trap. Someone says, "Just tell me the real reason." Sounds like care, but often it's a demand for deeper access, a belief that your first boundary wasn't enough. If you accept that premise, you've already stepped back into negotiation, but your first boundary was enough. You don't need to dig for better reasons to justify a decision. A simple answer ends it. I've already answered. No hostility, no explanation, just closure. Closure is powerful because it doesn't invite continuation. As you apply this in daily life, something subtle changes. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop planning long explanations. You stop preparing. Defenses. Your mind gets quieter. Your emotional energy returns. You realize how much of your life was spent anticipating pressure and building arguments against it. When you stop explaining, you also stop overthinking, because there's nothing to prepare, no debate to win, no image to protect, just clear limits. This is why predators dislike short answers. Short answers don't give them hooks. No hooks means no control. No control means they move on. They look for easier targets, people who still explain, and you're no longer one of them. There will be moments when you slip. You'll start explaining out of habit, catch yourself mid-sentence, and stop. That pause will feel awkward. Let it. Awkwardness is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. You're not learning to be harsh. You're learning to be precise. Precision in words, precision in actions, precision in presence. No excess, no waste, no leakage, just clean terms. And clean terms change everything. At some point, you'll realize the biggest change wasn't in how others treat you. It was in how you see yourself. Earlier, you acted like your boundaries needed approval, like they were requests waiting for validation. Now, they feel like facts, simple realities, no ceremony, no justification, just truth in motion. This shift is quiet, but it's radical, because once you stop explaining, you stop performing. You're no longer auditioning for acceptance. You're no longer shaping yourself to fit other people's comfort. You're simply existing as you are. And anyone who wants access to you must meet you there, not drag you back. There's a moment most people miss, the moment someone hears your boundary and says, "Okay," no argument, no pushback, no guilt, just acceptance. When that happens, you'll feel something unfamiliar, relief without aftermath, no anxiety, no second guessing. That's how normal interactions feel when boundaries are respected. Compare that to the old pattern. Long messages, emotional explanations, waiting for replies, reading tone, decoding silence, preparing follow-up clarifications. That wasn't connection. That was labor. Unpaid emotional labor to keep doors open that should have been allowed to close. Now your communication becomes light, efficient, direct, clean. You speak once, you mean it, you move forward. No emotional paperwork, no mental invoices, no debt. People who used to demand explanations will slowly stop, either because they learn your terms are real or because they lose interest when control is no longer available. Both outcomes are wins. One creates respect, the other creates distance. You need both. You'll also notice you become harder to manipulate in subtle ways. No guilt tripping, no urgency tactics, no dramatic sighs, no passive-aggressive comments. Because all those strategies require you to engage emotionally, and when you don't, they fall flat. This doesn't make you unkind, it makes you grounded. You still care, you still listen, you still empathize. But you don't collapse your boundaries to prove those things. Your care is no longer a bargaining chip. Eventually, this becomes your default, not a technique, not a strategy, just who you are. Someone who doesn't over-explain, someone who doesn't over-apologize, someone who doesn't negotiate their own limits. And once you live that way, the question that started all of this answers itself. Why are you still explaining yourself like your boundaries are negotiable terms? You're not anymore. Now, the last layer settles in. You understand that boundaries were never about finding the right words. They were about ending the habit of self-bargaining. Every time you explained too much, you treated your needs like something up for debate. Every time you justified yourself, you implied that your limits required approval. That era is over. You start seeing interactions differently, not as emotional puzzles to solve, but as simple exchanges. Request, response, respect or resistance. Nothing else. No hidden meaning, no psychological wrestling, no need to decode every reaction. If someone respects your line, they stay. If they don't, they reveal themselves. Life becomes clearer. The fear of being misunderstood fades. Because you realize something important, people who want to understand you don't need long explanations, and people who demand explanations rarely want understanding. They want influence. Once you see this, you stop feeding the wrong conversations. Your nervous system adapts. Silence after a boundary stops feeling dangerous. It starts feeling natural. You sit in it comfortably. No rushing, no smoothing, no emotional repair work, just stillness, and stillness becomes strength. This is where self-respect becomes visible, not through confident speeches, not through motivational quotes, but through small moments, saying no once, not adding a story, ending a call when a line is crossed, leaving. A room without drama. These tiny acts build a reputation stronger than any explanation ever could. Soon, you become someone who is easy to be around, not because you bend, but because you're clear. People don't have to guess, they don't have to test, they don't have to negotiate, they know where they stand. And clarity is a rare kindness in a noisy world. What once felt like fear now feels like freedom. You're no longer working to be understood by everyone. You're only being yourself, and that is enough. No more contracts written in apologies, no more clauses hidden in explanations, no more negotiations over your peace. Just clean terms and a life that finally belongs to you. One day you'll notice something quietly powerful. Someone will ask something that once would have sent you into a spiral of explaining. And this time, you'll answer with a single sentence, calm, simple, final. No rush of guilt, no tightening in the chest, no mental rehearsal afterward. Just peace. That's when you'll know the shift is real. You won't feel the need to prove you're reasonable. You won't feel the urge to justify your choices. You won't feel responsible for managing everyone's emotional comfort. You'll understand that your boundaries are not requests. They're conditions of access. And access is not a right, it's earned. People who once relied on your explanations will fade into the background, not with dramatic exits, just with quiet distance, because there's no longer anything to negotiate, no emotional opening to exploit, no endless conversation to keep you tied. You become low profit for manipulation, and that is a strange kind of safety. You'll still be kind, still warm, still human, but your kindness will have structure. Your warmth will have walls, and your humanity will include yourself, not exclude you. You'll stop giving away pieces of you just to keep situations smooth. In the end, it comes down to one truth. You were never meant to explain your worth. You were never meant to justify your limits. You were never meant to earn permission to protect your peace. You simply needed to stop negotiating with people who never respected the contract, and once you do that, your life speaks for itself.